You guys can turn to Psalm 49. And as we read through it, we're going to kind of read through it as we go. But we're going to read and probably spend the vast majority of our time in the beginning of it, in the first 4 verses. I think it's the first 4 verses, because it's extremely significant what we see in those first 4 verses. They really set the stage for the whole thing and explain what's going on and why the psalmist is doing what he's doing and thinking what he's thinking and saying what he's saying. And if you could go back real quick, Stace, if you notice the title of this is a little, really it's taken really from the first 4 verses. That meditation plus understanding equals peace of mind. When you meditate on something and you put your mind about it, when you're meditating on something, which thinking in generally is when you focus your thoughts, your mind on a specific thing. And to meditate means you keep that thought in your mind, focused on it for an extended period of time. And then when you do that long enough, and then the understanding comes and you really grasp what you're thinking about. It takes root. It plants itself there. Then it changes things. Then you have a peace of mind, a confidence and a trust in the Lord that brings peace to your heart and changes those feelings of anxiousness, of fear, of frustration. All of those feelings that come, they change, and you get peace when you focus your thoughts until you understand them and they change long enough. And so let's take a look at this first 4 verses here in Psalm 49, verses 1 through 4. It's another one of the Psalms of the sons of Korah. I believe it's the last one in this first section of them. But they say, "Hear this, all peoples. Give ear, all inhabitants of the world, both low and high, rich and poor, together." This is an all call, right? Everybody listen up. Everybody pay attention. Whether you're wealthy and powerful, rich in the upper class, or you're poor and what society-wise maybe powerless, you don't have much say in things, it doesn't matter. High and low, rich and poor, alike, no matter what your station of life, old or young, married, single, working, retired, all of that's irrelevant. This is for everybody because it applies to everybody. There's nobody who can say, well, this really doesn't work for me. No, God constituted humans in such a way that this is for everybody. And that's why God inspired the writer of this to say, "Hear this, all peoples." This is for all of us. There's none of us who can just check out on it. But look at this, 3 and 4. This is really the crux of the matter here. "My mouth shall speak wisdom. The meditation of my heart shall be understanding. I will incline my ear to a proverb. I will solve my riddle to the music of the lyre." And clearly, the solving the riddle to the music of the lyre is what he's doing in the psalm. Because remember, psalms were songs, they were musical. It even begins in the intro there, "to the choir master." This is a song. A psalm is a song to be sung. And what he's doing is he's got a problem. He's got something that's bugging him, something that's irritating, something that's frustrating him, causing anxiousness, causing fear. But he's going to deal with that in this psalm. He said, "I will solve my riddle to the music of the lyre." But how he's going to do it is what he said in verse 3. If you could put that back up there. "The meditation of my heart shall be understanding." In other words, I'm going to set my mind about some things and meditate on them. And meditate on them and meditate on them. And then I'm going to get some understanding. And then this thing is going to be fixed for me. That's wisdom. And that's why he says, "My mouth shall speak wisdom." This is something where we gain wisdom and insight from doing this. And we too often, especially in charismatic or Pentecostal circles, we tend to devalue thinking. And we prioritize feeling and experience. And I think that's tragic that we do that, because we cause ourselves a lot of problems when we devalue our thinking. And we're just going to look at a couple different places. I usually am not a fan of getting too far outside of whatever the main text is that we're looking at, but I want to bring some great attention to this need for meditation to the point of understanding. It's crucial. When we look in the scriptures, we see something like in Romans chapter 1, where Paul is describing the horrible state of humans, the human problem, the way sin worked its havoc in the midst of people. And you see one of the common things about this has to do with the thought life. He says in verse 18, "The wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men who by their unrighteousness suppress the truth." Right? They're suppressing truth. They're taking facts, information about God, and they're suppressing it in their thinking. "For what can be known about God is plain to them because he's shown it to them. For his invisible attributes, namely his eternal power and divine nature, have been clearly perceived, recognized with your thoughts, ever since the creation of the world and the things that have been made, so they're without excuse. For all they knew God, they did not honor him as God or give thanks to him." Listen to this. "But they became futile in their thinking, and their foolish hearts were darkened. Claiming to be wise, they became fools, and then exchanged the glory of the immortal God for images resembling mortal man and birds and animals and creeping things." So do you see what the heart of that was? They became futile in their thinking. Primarily in their thinking about God, and that in turn affected their thinking about themselves. And so it would make sense that one of the primary things that has to change in us as we pursue God is the changing of our thoughts about God, which will change the way that we think about ourselves. And that's exactly what this psalmist is going to do. He's going to meditate on what the situation is in life between people and God, and that's going to bring him great comfort and great peace. If you look at Romans chapter 12, one of the more famous passages of this letter to the Romans, Paul says to not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind. Okay, think about Transformers. That's all the rage in this generation, the Transformers movies and things. But you think about something that transforms. Think about a caterpillar that transforms into a butterfly. A transformation is not a minor change, it's a major change. A significant change that we experience in our pursuit of Christ and the goal of Christ likeness in our life happens through the renewing of our mind, of our thinking, of the way that we think about God and the way that we think about other things. Even when we talk about, what some would call spiritual warfare, in 2 Corinthians chapter 10, there's one of the more common passages there about the weapons of our warfare and the way that we fight spiritual things. But it's not what you would normally think of, I guess, when you think about a spiritual fight. Paul says, though we walk in the flesh, we are not waging war according to the flesh. For the weapons of our warfare are not of the flesh, but have divine power to destroy strongholds. I mean, just think about that. You have weapons in Christ that have divine power to destroy strongholds. We think about power in weapons like nuclear bombs and things like that. Weapons have awesome power of destruction. Is there any power in the creation greater than divine power? No. No, the power of God is the most powerful thing. It's greater than the power of our sun, greater than the power of any bomb we can construct, greater than any other power. And our weapons have divine power to destroy strongholds. How does that happen? We destroy arguments and every lofty opinion raised against the knowledge of God. When the world says certain things are true about God that are lies, we have divine power to deal with that. both in our own minds, because when we grow up in a culture, we tend to believe certain things that maybe we didn't intend to believe, but we've been shaped and influenced by our culture. But we have divine power to deal with that. We also have divine power to help other people. So we destroy arguments and opinions raised against the knowledge of God, and we take every thought captive to obey Christ. That's spiritual warfare. That's the weapons that we have that are divinely powered to destroy the strongholds of the enemy in our life, are by dealing with arguments and thoughts and opinions that are not true about God and not true about us. And it's not just Paul who goes on that kick. Though I do want to look at one quick other place in Paul. In Philippians chapter 2, he says, "Have this mind among yourselves, which is yours in Christ Jesus." So he's encouraging us to have a certain mindset that was the same way that Jesus thought, who, though he was in the form of God, did not count equality with God a thing to be grasped. So Jesus' whole thing of denying certain of his attributes and coming into the world in the flesh and dying on the cross, which Paul goes on to say there in Philippians 2, it started with him thinking. And he thought that equality with God wasn't something to be held on to, but that he was willing to set those things aside to redeem humanity. It started with a thought, and we're told to have that same mind. But again, even Peter, in 1 Peter chapter 4, says, "Since therefore Christ suffered in the flesh, arm yourselves with the same way of thinking." Right? When we arm ourselves, you in the military, when you get armed, you get guns, you get grenades, you get, rocket launchers and all kinds of fun stuff. Arming is weapons. Arm yourselves with the same way of thinking that Jesus had. And then in verse 7, he says, "The end of all things is at hand." We would all agree with that. "Therefore be self-controlled and sober-minded for the sake of your prayers." In other words, because the time is getting short and Jesus' return is getting nearer, we should be even more focused in our thinking, even more clear in our thoughts, so that we can pray and be about the Lord's business the way that he's intended us to be. So when the psalmist says, "My mouth will speak wisdom and the meditation of my heart will be understanding," and that through that thinking and meditating and understanding, I'm going to solve my riddle with this psalm. I'm telling you, where there are problems, one of the most important things we need to do is think about it. We need to be transformed by the renewal of our minds according to the Word of God. And that's why memorization and meditation on Scripture is invaluable to your walk with Jesus, because that's how you renew your mind. That's how you change your thinking. And seriously, it takes time and effort and intentionality, because you can't just say, well, I'm going to spend 5 or 10 minutes a week looking over this verse and I'm going to memorize this one verse, because we've all done that. And let's be honest, it hasn't really changed much, right? It just doesn't work that way. And you do any research into any study you want about habit forming, and habit forming takes a certain amount of intentionality for a certain number of days consecutively to instill a new habit. There's a lot of differences over how much time a day and how many days in a row, but everybody agrees it has to be consecutive days for a substantial amount of time, talking, at least 7 to 10 minutes a day of focused meditation on this thing for 30 to 60 days. But it will truly change, neuroscience will tell you, it will change the structure of your brain. It will create new neural pathways that you're literally creating new structure in your brain to think differently, truly being transformed by the renewing of your mind. So look at what he does now to solve the riddle. Okay, this was his goal. He was going to meditate on something and really develop that understanding of it in order to solve his riddle, to deal with his problem. Verse 5, "Why should I fear in times of trouble? when the iniquity of those who cheat me surrounds me, those who trust in their wealth and boast of the abundance of their riches. That's the problem. Off the cuff, that's the problem. He's fearful because there's a troubled time. Somebody who is cheating him is surrounding him, and they're boasting over their wealth. And certainly in that culture, maybe even more so than ours, the wealthy were powerful and the poor were not powerful. And so somebody who was wealthy and boasting wasn't just some rich person that was irrelevant. They were probably very powerful and could damage them. But he's afraid. And he's concerned about it. Concerned that something's going to happen in this. But he's questioning, why should I be afraid? Why should I be afraid? Verse 7, truly no man can ransom another or give to God the price of his life. For the ransom of their life is costly and can never suffice, that he should live on forever and never see the pit. For he sees that even the wise die. The fool and the stupid alike must perish and leave their wealth to others. Their graves are their homes forever, their dwelling places to all generations, though they called lands by their own names. So these were wealthy people who had named lands after themselves, kind of like Philippi was named after King Philip, for instance. These were wealthy people. Man in his pomp will not remain like the beasts that perish. This is the path of those who have foolish confidence. Yet after them, people approve of their boasts. Like sheep, they are appointed for Sheol. Death shall be their shepherd, and the upright shall rule over them in the morning. Their forms shall be consumed in Sheol with no place to dwell. But God will ransom my soul from the power of Sheol, for he will receive me. That's the substance of his meditation. That you know what? These rich people that are bugging me, they're going to die. And it's not going to go well for them. All their wealth, all their power, none of that can go with them. They're going to depart and die just like a wild animal and just be dead. And that's the end of it. He says, but God will ransom my soul from the power of Sheol, for he will receive me. In other words, no matter what's happening in your life, no matter how much you're being mistreated by somebody, no matter how miserable they're making your life, they're going to die one day and be away from God, and it's going to be terrible. And it should make you mourn for them. But you're going to die one day, even if your life is miserable to the end of it because of the way you're being treated. Number one, it doesn't have to be miserable. You can still have joy in the Lord regardless of what most would consider crummy circumstances. But you're going to die and be with the Lord, and you're never going to think about that again. Because this life is such a small speck compared to eternity, it doesn't matter. And so when you meditate on that, and you meditate on their end and your end, and you get an eternal perspective on things, understanding begins to change. You see how that works? You meditate on that, you keep thinking on that, you keep reflecting on, so God, what's really going to happen with this thing? You know, worst case scenario, they make my life hard and challenging, and I have to lean into you for more grace, but you give me peace, and it just astounds people, and I get more opportunities to tell of how good you are, that I can be joyful in the midst of this circumstance, and then I get to die and be with you. So how, again, is this going to be bad? It really can't be. It's a win-win situation in Christ. And when you meditate on that and your understanding changes, you develop this peace of mind. And so this is the answer here. He's now solved his riddle. He's gained perspective. Now look at the final answer. You could almost insert a therefore or a so in front of this. Be not afraid when a man becomes rich, when the glory of his house increases. For when he dies, he'll carry nothing away. His glory will not go down after him. For though while he lives, he counts himself blessed, and though you get praise when you do well for yourself, his soul will go to the generation of his fathers who will never again see light. Man in his pomp, yet without understanding, is like the beasts that perish. In other words, when I really reflect on the way people mistreat me and what's going to happen to them, what's going to happen to me, it doesn't matter. They're going to go the way they go. Whether God deals with them in this life or the next, they're going to be dealt with. And that's going to be the end of it. What they had in this life is all they got. But the way he came to that conclusion is what I want to stress. Through meditating and changing his understanding. And that's what gave him the peace of mind and the confidence in the Lord. So I just pray that the Lord would encourage you in your thought life to really value thinking and to spend time thinking. Some great disciplines to go with that would be silence and solitude. Get some time where you're alone, where there are no other people around. And for some, that's easier than others. Some, it's pretty challenging. But try to get some time, maybe just start with 15 minutes. You think, 15 minutes isn't that long. You're right, it's not. But when you're trying to be alone with nothing else for 15 minutes, that's an eternity. I mean, turn the cell phone off, turn the TV off, turn the radio off, and just be silent. Don't talk. Just think. Have the scriptures. And don't just read for 15 minutes. Get one focused passage and just read it and think about it. Just think. Set a clock if you have to for 15 minutes, but just do that. Spend some time in silence, in solitude, just meditating and thinking. And God will give you grace because God created us as thinking kinds of things. And he encourages us to think like him, because that will transform us more into his image.